Welcome back to Inherited Dawn, a One Piece podcast. We are breaking down chapter 248, Former God versus God's Priest.
And we open on a truly desperate scene. The Going Merry, our home, is on fire.
And Chopper is all alone trying to save her. This priest, Shura, is just watching, this smug look on his face, while Chopper is forced to make a hard choice.
It's one of those moments that really tests a Straw Hat's strength when they're all on their own.
It is. But you know what else it is? It's a moment where a hero shows up right when you need one. If you want us to show up in your feed right when a new chapter drops, go ahead and ring that golden bell for us. It means a lot.
And just like that, the Sky Knight arrives.
Let's get into it. The chapter starts not with the crew, but with Conus and her father, Pagaya. They made it to safety.
They found refuge at Gan Fall's home. It's a small, quiet place. And the first thing we see of the former god of Skypiea is him watering his pumpkins.
The contrast is immediate. Enel floats on a golden throne surrounded by guards and announces his divine judgment. He lives in a palace of gold. Gan Fall, the man he replaced, is a farmer. He's in a simple wooden house tending to his garden.
It's a choice by Oda to introduce him this way. We've heard the title God thrown around so much. Enel uses it as a declaration of absolute untouchable power. For Gan Fall, it seems to have meant something closer to a steward or a caretaker.
You can tell right away. Enel floats. He literally doesn't touch the ground. Gan Fall has his hands in the dirt. He's growing things. He's nurturing life on the island instead of threatening to destroy it.
It tells you everything you need to know about the kind of ruler he was. He's gentle. He's connected to the land. He even calls his pumpkins cuties. There's a warmth to him that is completely absent in Enel.
Exactly. He's not floating above it all. He's part of the island itself. And then he starts talking about the Straw Hats. He asks Conus about them, and Pagaya immediately says they're dangerous pirates.
But Gan Fall pushes back on that idea. He doesn't accept the label at face value. He calls them pirates, but he corrects himself. He says they're people that don't follow rules.
That phrasing is so important. When someone from the world government says that, it sounds like an accusation, like these people are criminals because they don't obey us. But when Gan Fall says it, it sounds like he's describing a quality he understands, maybe even respects.
It's not him putting them down. It's a description. He sees their freedom as their defining trait, not their criminality. He has lived under the rigid, oppressive system Enel created. He must recognize the value of people who refuse to bow to that kind of authority.
It's such a respectful way to put it. He gets it. He understands what pirates like the Straw Hats are actually about. He isn't scared of them just because they fly a Jolly Roger. He's judging them based on their actions, and so far, all he's seen is them helping Conus. And then he drops a huge piece of information.
He says he met another group of pirates 20 years ago, and that he befriended them.
My mind immediately went to one place. 20 years ago. Who was active 20 years ago? Who was at the peak of their power, on the final leg of a journey that would change the world? The timeline fits perfectly. That has to be Roger's crew.
It's the most likely answer. The execution of Gold Roger was 22 years ago in the story's timeline. This would mean he visited Skypiea near the end of his final journey.
He was on his way to the last island. He was finding all the poneglyphs. It makes total sense that one of them would be up here, on an island in the sky, totally cut off from the rest of the world.
We know he could read the poneglyphs. We know he reached the final island and learned the true history. The question has always been, how? How did he find them all? This chapter suggests an answer. He didn't just barrel through the Grand Line. He explored the impossible places.
What if part of that journey was going into the sky? What if he met Gan Fall, befriended him, and that's how he learned about the poneglyph here? Imagine that conversation. Roger, this larger-than-life man, sitting down with Gan Fall, the farmer god, and just talking.
Roger would have had someone on his crew who could read the ancient text, just as I do for the Straw Hats. Perhaps that person explained the significance of the poneglyph to Gan Fall. It would explain why Gan Fall seems to understand the Straw Hats so quickly. He's seen their type before. He's met people on a grand historical quest.
And Gan Fall looked back on it fondly. He said they became friends. He wasn't afraid of them. He embraced them. It just shows again that the Straw Hats are on the right path, walking in the footsteps of giants. They're making the same friends, fighting the same battles for freedom.
It adds another layer to Roger's legacy. He wasn't just someone who took over islands. He built relationships in the most unlikely of places. He befriended a sky god, a merman on Fishman Island, and a samurai in Wano. He was building a network of allies who understood the true nature of the world.
He was finding the people who the world government either ignored or oppressed, and he was listening to them. That's what Luffy does. He shows up and he listens.
Then the conversation turns darker. Gan Fall talks about the war between the Skypeans and the Shandians. This isn't a new conflict. It's been going on for 400 years.
400 years. That's not a war. That's just a state of being for them. Generations have been born and died knowing nothing but that conflict. And Gan Fall says he was close to peace. He was in negotiations. Things were about to be resolved. And then Enel showed up.
6 years ago, Enel and his priests arrived and everything changed. Gan Fall states it very clearly. Peace was within our grasp. He uses those exact words. It wasn't a distant hope. It was about to happen.
That makes Enel so much worse. He's not just some guy who came in and took over. He's the reason this entire conflict is still happening. He actively destroyed the chance for a generations-long war to finally end.
A tyrant who seizes power during peacetime is one kind of villain, but a villain who purposefully stops peace for his own gain is another. Enel thrives on the division. The constant state of war allows him to position himself as the only source of order. He profits from the chaos.
It's classic divide and conquer. He keeps the Skypeans and Shandians fighting each other so they can't unite and fight him. He's not just ruling them, he's managing their hatred. It's sick.
Gan Fall carries that failure with him. He apologizes to Pagaya for it, even though it wasn't his fault. He feels responsible for the peace he couldn't secure. He says, "I'm sorry, I was a powerless god."
That's the mark of a true leader, taking responsibility even for things outside his control. Wapol would never do that. Crocodile would never do that. They'd blame everyone else. Gan Fall carries the weight of his people's suffering.
It's a parallel to King Cobra of Alabasta. He was willing to bow, to sacrifice his own dignity if it would stop the conflict. Gan Fall lost his position and his home, but his main regret is the lost peace. He cares more about his people than his title. And then he tells them about an old legend.
A song that was heard when God's Island, Upper Yard, was born. He says it signaled the beginning of the war.
The Song of the Island. He specifies that he doesn't know what it sounds like. It's a lost piece of their history. The day their holy land appeared in the sky was also the day a 400-year war began.
That's a heavy legend. The birth of your home is tied to the start of a war that's lasted for centuries. It's a creation myth and a tragedy all in one.
But he believes that when the song is heard again, the war will finally end. It's a beautiful piece of mythology. The sound that started the conflict is also the key to its resolution. It suggests that the solution isn't to forget the past or ignore the origin of the conflict, but to face it, to hear that sound again and understand it differently this time.
It puts this whole arc in a different light. The goal isn't just to beat Enel and get some gold. The true victory is bringing that song back. It's about ending a historical conflict. It's about restoring a balance that was shattered centuries ago.
The Straw Hats are not just fighters. They are like archaeologists, uncovering a lost sound that holds the key to peace. Suddenly, his bird, Pierre, gets agitated. He starts squawking.
Gan Fall knows immediately that something is wrong. There's no hesitation. He doesn't ask what's happening. He just looks at Pierre and he knows.
He puts down his watering can, walks inside, and we see him putting on his armor. The gentle farmer is gone. The knight has returned. He tells Pagaya and Konis to stay hidden, grabs his lance, and just takes off.
He knows someone is in trouble and he's going. That's our Sky Knight. He doesn't have to do it. He's the former god. He could just stay home and water his pumpkins. No one would blame him, but his sense of duty is still there. He's still the protector.
And the scene shifts to show us exactly who's in trouble.
It cuts back to the Going Merry, and it is just a horrible sight. Chopper is there alone, bruised and beaten up, desperately trying to put out a fire on the main mast. The wood is blackened, smoke is pouring out. It's an attack on their home.
The ship is his patient. He's a doctor trying to stop the bleeding, but the wound is a fire. He's using buckets of island cloud to try and douse the flames, but it's not working. He's so small compared to the mast and the fire. He looks completely out of his depth.
And the one causing it is Shura, one of Enel's priests. He's just floating there on his giant bird, Fuza, which can breathe fire. Shura himself has this lance that shoots out heat. He's calmly setting the ship on fire, piece by piece. There's no honor in it. He's just a bully.
He is enjoying Chopper's panic. Chopper is begging him to stop. It's heartbreaking. He's yelling, "Stop it! What are you doing?" He's the youngest member of the crew. He's not a fighter by nature, and he's been left to defend their home all by himself.
But he does it. He makes a choice. He looks at the fire spreading up the mast, he looks at the rest of the ship, and he realizes he can't save both. In a last-ditch effort, he uses his heavy point form, gets a grip on the massive wooden mast, and breaks it clean off. He throws the entire burning section into the sea of clouds below.
He cut off a limb to save the body. It's a brutal but necessary decision. For a doctor, that kind of choice must be painful, but he made it without hesitation when it mattered. He saw the problem, the fire was going to spread and destroy the whole ship, and he did the surgery.
That's our doctor. He understood the situation and made the hard call to save the Merry as a whole. That's a huge moment of growth for Chopper. In Alabasta, he was fighting with Usopp. Here, he's alone. He's the sole defender. He protected his family's home from certain destruction.
But Shura doesn't care. He watches Chopper tear off part of the mast to save the ship, and his reaction is just boredom. He's not impressed. He's not stopped. He just keeps setting more fires. He tells Chopper that if he wants to survive, he has to make sacrifices. He's enjoying this. He's lecturing him on survival while actively trying to kill him.
He explains the rules of this ordeal. The forest of Upper Yard is divided into 4 territories, one for the ordeal of balls, one for iron, one for string, and one for swamp. But the sacrificial altar, where the Merry is neutral ground.
It's a so-called safe zone. The invaders are supposed to be tested in the forest, and if they manage to reach the altar, they're free. The priests are not supposed to attack them there. It's meant to be a sanctuary.
But then he says because some of the sacrifices, he means Nami, Zoro, and Robin, broke the rules by leaving the altar and entering the forest, someone else has to pay with their life.
He's a hypocrite. The rule is priests don't attack at the altar. He is actively attacking someone at the altar. He's using the fact that Nami, Zoro, and I left as an excuse to break his own rules. There's no fairness here. It's just a predator playing with his food. He's making up a reason to be cruel.
He goes in for the kill. He points his heat lance right at Chopper. You see the look on Chopper's face in that panel. His eyes are wide. He's terrified. He's done everything he can. He saved the ship, but he can't save himself. The fight is over.
And at that exact moment, a second lance appears out of nowhere. It's a flash of steel. It blocks Shura's lance just inches from Chopper's face. The panel is just the clash of the 2 weapons, with a massive clang sound effect.
Gan Fall, the Sky Knight is here. He just dropped out of the sky, a shield of steel between the priest and our doctor. The timing is perfect. It's the arrival of the cavalry. He wasn't a moment too late or a moment too early. He arrived at the last possible second.
The look on Chopper's face shifts from terror to pure awe. This knight in shining armor just appeared to save him. He looks up and all he sees is this huge figure in full plate mail, holding back the villain. For a character like Chopper, who loves stories and heroes, this is like a fairy tale coming to life.
My man, what an entrance! And this kicks off a full-on aerial joust. Gan Fall on his winged horse, Pierre, and Shura on his giant fire-breathing bird, Fuza. They're clashing in mid-air above the clouds. It's a classic night battle in a completely fantastical setting.
Shura immediately doesn't take him seriously. He recognizes Gan Fall and calls him an old man. He looks down on him as the former god. He says, the only thing a powerless god like you can do now is tend to your garden. He thinks this is an easy fight.
Big mistake. You never underestimate the old guy in a story like this. Rayleigh, Garp, Whitebeard, the old generation in this world is not to be messed with. Gan Fall has been doing this for a long, long time. He's not the former god for no reason. He was the protector of this island. He held that title for years.
And he proves it instantly. Shura comes at him with his heat lance, but Gan Fall is faster. He dodges, using Pierre's agility to get in close, inside Shura's reach. Shura is so focused on his weapon that he doesn't see what Gan Fall is doing with his other hand.
It wasn't with his lance either. It was a dial. He had it hidden in his gauntlet. He presses it right into Shura's chest and unleashes a massive shockwave. It looked like an impact dial. Shura had no idea what was coming. He just gets blasted off his bird.
The impact is huge. Shura is sent flying backwards, coughing up blood. His armor cracks. It's a single blow that completely turns the fight around. It shows the difference between them.
Exactly. Shura relies on his position, his title, and his fancy fire lance. He's arrogant. He thinks being one of Enel's priests makes him invincible. Gan Fall doesn't have a title anymore. He doesn't have a fancy devil fruit power. He uses skill, experience, and the tools of his homeland.
It shows the difference between their approaches to combat. Shura is all about overwhelming force from a distance. Gan Fall is a strategist. He knew he couldn't win a long-range battle against a heat lance, so he closed the distance and used a weapon Shura wasn't prepared for. He used his knowledge.
Experience wins every time. Shura thought he was the powerful one, the enforcer of God's will. But Gan Fall just showed him what real strength in Skypiea looks like. It's not about divine right. It's about knowing your home, your tools, and your enemy.
Speaking of technology, it's interesting to look at Oda's author comment for this chapter.
Oh yeah? What do you have to say this week?
He said he went to Nagasaki to see something for a future arc and thanked the workers at Mitsubishi Heavy Industries.
Mitsubishi? That's a massive engineering and shipbuilding company. They build everything from ships to planes to power plants. So he's looking at real-world heavy industry for inspiration.
It makes you think. We have the dials in Skypiea, which are a kind of strange, natural technology. They absorb and release things like wind, heat, and impact. They feel almost magical. On the other end of the spectrum, we have whatever Vegapunk is creating for the world government, which seems to be much more mechanical and scientific.
So you've got this nature-based tech up in the sky and this industrial man-made tech down in the blue sea. Oda is clearly thinking about how technology and industry will play a bigger role in the world. Maybe for Franky's backstory, or a future island it's all about shipbuilding and machines? Water 7, maybe? That would be right up my alley.
It's possible. What's interesting is how he grounds his fantasy world in real-world research. He's not just inventing things from scratch. He's looking at how real ships are built, how real industry works, and then he's infusing that knowledge into his world. It gives everything a sense of weight and believability.
It does. Even when we're on an island in the sky, watching a knight on a Pegasus joust a priest on a fire-breathing bird, the tech they use feels like it has rules. The impact dial stores kinetic energy and releases it. It makes sense. I like that he's pulling from real-world sources like that.
It does. But for now, the technology in play is a simple dial in the hand of a very capable knight.
And that capable knight just saved our little doctor and the crew's home. What a chapter. The stakes just got very real, very fast.
They did. This isn't an adventure anymore. It's a battle for survival.
If you think Gan Fall is the realest god Skypiea's ever had, drop a comment below. We want to know who you're rooting for in this sky war.
For me, this chapter locked in the true nature of the conflict. It's not just about the Straw Hats versus Enel. It's about a 400-year-old war that was stolen from the brink of peace. That single piece of dialogue from Gan Fall changes the entire context of the arc.
Yeah, that's the big takeaway. Enel isn't just a bad guy, he's a historical spoiler. He showed up and pressed pause on a resolution that was generations in the making. He's holding an entire culture hostage, forcing them to relive their trauma over and over again. It makes defeating him so much more important. It's not just for the gold, it's for the sake of history itself.
It also changes how we see Gan Fall. He's not just a mysterious knight who helps travelers for a fee. He is the living memory of that lost piece. He's the living proof of a better Skypiea. He represents what the island was and what it could be again if Enel is removed from the picture. His fight is not just for his own pride or to regain his throne. It's to finish what he started 6 years ago.
And it was a huge moment for Chopper. He was tested, alone, against an enemy he couldn't beat, but he didn't break. He made a hard choice and saved the Mary. It shows that even when they're separated, every single Straw Hat has the strength to protect what matters. The spirit of the crew is in every one of them. He stood his ground to protect his home, just like Zoro did against the Nyaban brothers, just like Sanji did at the Barati, just like Usopp did in Syrup Village. It's a core Straw Hat trait. He faced impossible odds and he didn't run. Super!